We continue now at the top of Daf Chavav Amud Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 26b. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that a person can acquire metaltal and movable property together with land, meaning to say if he makes a kinyan on land with kesef or with shtar or with a chazaka, so then he can be kona movable property along with that as well. And the Gemara asked, does the movable property, does the metaltalin need to be tzivurin, meaning to say, does it need to be on the actual land that the person is acquiring? And the Gemara is now in the middle of bringing a proof from a Mishnah in Peah. The Mishnah in Peah says that any amount of land is chayiv in Peah. That's when you leave off the corners of the field for the poor. And any amount of land is chayiv in bikurim, the bringing of the first fruits. And furthermore, the Mishnah says, v'lichtov aleh pruzbul. Furthermore, any amount of land you can write a pruzbul on. Rashi says, "V'lichtov ala pruzbul damrina b'Meseches Gittin." We say in Meseches Gittin, "Ein kosvin pruzbul el ala karka." You're only allowed to write a pruzbul which allows the creditor to collect the debt even after the Shemitah year. Normally, Shemitah cancels a loan, but you're only allowed to write a pruzbul which allows the creditor to collect if there is land, meaning v'im yesh karka kolshu lalova. If the lova has any amount of land, kosvin ala pruzbul, then you can write a pruzbul af mechov gadol, even if it's a large debt. V'shuv lo tishmetenu shvias, and Shemitah will no longer cancel the loan. Tikon Hillel pruzbul ashibud karkos tikon demilva mitzuyahi. Because when Hillel said that there's a concept, he instituted a concept of pruzbul that only applies when there's some kind of a lien on property, because that's a kind of loan that's easily collectible. And so again, in any case, as long as the borrower has any amount of land, you can write a pruzbul. V'liknos ima nechasim shein lamachrayis. And then the Mishnah in Peah says that also the concept of acquiring movable property together with land, that applies with any amount of land. As long as any amount of land is given over as a kinyan, then along with that kinyan, you can have a kinyan agav, and you can acquire the movable property as well. And so the Gemara now brings its proof. Now, if you say that the movable property needs to be on the actual land, so if you have a tiny amount of land, what can possibly be on that land? How are you making the kinyan? Obviously, kinyan agav, the metaltalin does not have to be on the karka. And the Gemara says, Tir Gemara, Rav Shmuel bar Bisna kami de Rav Yosef. Rav Shmuel bar Bisna, he answered in front of Rav Yosef as follows: Kagon shenoatz b'machat. The case over here is he stuck a little needle in this tiny amount of land, and the idea is you're acquiring the needle together with the land. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said to him, Kivastan, you're agitating me. Ichval Tana lashmin an machat. Do you think the Tana of the Mishnah would go to such trouble just to talk about a kinyan on a needle? Meaning the Mishnah is going to say that with a small amount of land you can make a kinyan agav, and the Mishnah is just talking about acquiring something as insignificant as a machat. Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said back to that, Man le molon de lo tala ba marganisa de shavi alfa zuzeh. Who's to say that a person didn't put a pearl on that needle and it's worth 1,000 zuz? It doesn't have to be that it's something worthless. It's possible that even a small item can be worth a lot of money. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, the following proof. Amar Rebbe Lazar says, Ma'isa b'Madoni echad shahaya b'Yerushalayim. There was an incident with a person from Madon, and he was in Yerushalayim. Some have the girsa of Moroni meaning he was from Meron, and he was in Yerushalayim. That's the girsa that we find in Baba Basra. In any case, this particular individual, shahayu lo metaltalin harbe, he had a lot of metaltalin. Uvikesh litnam b'matana, he wanted to give it as a gift. Amrulo, they said to him, Ein lo takana, there's no solution, at sheyiknem al gabe karka, unless you do a kinyan through karka. And so the Braisa continues, also, what did this individual do? Halach v'lokach beis sela samach l'Yerushalayim. He went and he brought a sela amount of property, and it was near Yerushalayim. Right now, Rashi says we think it means a sela like the size of a coin, a tiny amount of land. Rashi also says lishna achrina, another explanation, sela mamish. Right now we think it's an actual rock, shu gavoa v'chidud, which is very sharp. Vein lahamid olav tzon v'chevis. You can't really place anything on it. You can't place sheep or barrels on it. In any case, he bought a kind of land which you really can't put much on that land. And he bought this land near Yerushalayim, V'yomer, and he said, Safoni zeh, this northern side of the property, Leploni, it belongs to so-and-so. V'imo, and together with the land, we're going to make a kinyan on Meya Tzon, Umeya Chevios, on 100 sheep and 100 barrels. V'meis, and then the individual died, V'kaimu es devarav, and the Chachamim accepted his words, and they said that it was a good kinyan. And so the Gemara brings its proof, V'yamid b'inon sevurim. Now, if you say that we need the movable property to be on the land, but inon sevurim ba, it needs to be on the land itself. Beis sela l'may chazi, so a beis sela of land, what does it fit for? What are you going to possibly put on this land? And the Gemara answers to that, Mi savrit beis sela sela mamish. Do you think that beis sela means that it's actually just the size of a sela, it's actually a coin? My sela, what does it mean sela denafish tuv? It's plenty of land. V'amai karu le sela. Why do they refer to it as a sela? To kashi kesela. It just means that the land was hard like a rock. And the Gemara continues with another proof. Tashma, come in here, the following proof. The Yom Rav Yehuda Marav, because Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, Maisaba de Mecha, there was an incident with a particular person. Shechala b'Yerushalayim Rebbe Elazar. Now, one version of the story is he was sick in Yerushalayim. That version of the story follows Rebbe Elazar. Then even an individual who is sick, who's on his deathbed, still an actual kinyan needs to be made. Words alone are not good. V'amrila, but some have the version Bari Haya, that he was actually a healthy individual. Kirabbanan, it's following the Rabbanan according to that version, because if he was a sick individual, he'd actually be able to create a kinyan with his words alone. And in any case, shahayulo metaltalin harbe. In any case, he had a lot of metaltalin, a lot of movable property. Uvikesh litinim b'matana. He wanted to give them away as a gift. Amrulo, they said to him, ein lo takonat sheyiknem agave karka. The only solution we can come up with is if he makes an acquisition. Through making an acquisition on land, he'll make an acquisition on these metaltalin. Me'asa, so what did he do? Halach v'lokach beis rova samach l'Yerushalayim. He went and he bought a base rova near Yerushalayim. V'yomer, and he said, tefach al tefach leploni, one tefach by one tefach of this property goes to so-and-so. V'ima meyatzon, and together with the acquisition that I'm making for him on the land, together with that, he'll get 100 sheep, umeya chevios, and 100 barrels of a mace, and he died. V'kaimu chachamim es devorav, and the chachamim, they fulfilled his words. And so again, the Gemara brings its proof. V'yamid binan sevurim, if you say that we need the movable property to be on the land, tefach al tefach, lemay chazi, so if it's just a tefach on tefach, if it's just a tefach by a tefach, what is that fit for? How could it possibly be that the metaltalin was on the land? And the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayaskinon, here what are we dealing with? We're not actually dealing with actual tzon and actual chevios. Lidemei, we're talking about money, meaning to say it was the value of the 100 tzon and the value of the 100 barrels. And the idea was that the money actually it was placed on the tefach by a tefach of land of that property. And the Gemara says, Hachinami mistabra, it makes sense to say this, that we're talking about money and not actual objects. Because if you think we're talking about 100 sheep and 100 barrels, that's actually what we mean to say. So then the kinyan can be made with a kinyan chalipin. With a kinyan chalipin, the purchaser just gives an object, and through that exchange, that would create the kinyan. But the Gemara says, V'yela ma'ila demei. But rather, what are you going to say? We're talking about money over here. So nikninu nehile b'mashicha. So why not just do a kinyan with mashicha? Let him just pull the money. Ela delese lemekabel matana. Rather, you have to say the person who's receiving the gift isn't around, and that's why he can't do mashicha. So hachanami delese lemekabel matana. So too over here, he's not around. The mekabel matana, the person receiving it, is not around, so he can't do a chalipin. So chalipin would not have been a solution. But the Gemara continues, V'nizkinu nehile agavacher. Why is it that the only solution was to do a kinyan through karka? Why not give it to another individual? Let another individual do the mashicha and the metaltalin, and he'll just be zochit on behalf of the recipient. And to that the Gemara says, Lo samcha daite, the giver did not want to rely on another individual. He didn't trust the people of this particular location. Savar shamet v'yachalu, because he thought if he allows those people to do a mashiach on the property, they might go ahead and take the property. It won't get to the intended recipient. But the Gemara continues, V'yela mayin lo takana. But if that's the case, why does it say there was no solution? There was another solution. He just didn't want to use the other solution. And the Gemara says, Hachi kamar, that's exactly what it was saying. L'may de lo samcha daite, because of the fact that he didn't rely on these other individuals, ein lo takana sheyiknem al gabe karka. So there was no solution. The only solution was to do a kinyan al gabe karka. And in any case, there is no conclusive proof from this incident, because we don't know whether the kinyan is being made on money which was on the actual property, or if it's talking about metaltalin which was not on the actual property. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come in here, the following proof, and this is from a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni, Meiser Rebbe Gamliel Uzakenim. There was an incident with Rebbe Gamliel and the elders, Shayuboim Besfina, that they were in a ship. Amar Lehem Rebbe Gamliel Uzakenim, and Rebbe Gamliel said to the Zakenim, Isser Shani Osid Lomud, the Meiser, which in the future I will measure out, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis.